Hello, brothers and sisters. This is Non-Inquisitor with another recap of Spirit of 77. This was our second session, and let's dive in. So, first of all, comments from the players. The session was thoroughly enjoyable, and the story was quite fun. The game also was called or tagged too much basic at time by two of my players. They mentioned the game wasn't clear enough at some points during the games, uh, like first aid scene. I will talk about later, and yeah, until I figured out how to do it after the game. And at another point, it was trying to use tactics and area knowledge to stop a police car chase. And yeah, no such move exists in the game. maybe maybe hidden in some form in the back of the book in the moves encyclopedia you have at the end. But when you play, you don't really have time to browse through it, and certainly I will not be the guy to learn them all by heart. So let's dive into the story, shall we? So the game started on a Sunday morning at Little Street Church, and it was I started a gospel music. The Reverend Jordan Black lifted the souls of everyone involved with one of his legendary speech, and suddenly the mass was interrupted by a guy named Jimmy Jim. I described him as a suave brother in full daishiki and African attire, and he shouted, "They found another one! They found another one!" He was in shock, and he was just sending the information that another dead person was found in Little Street from a series of murder. So people started to whisper in the crowd, "Is there a serial killer on the loose in Little Street, our little corner of Big West, our setting for this game?" So the Super Action Time crew went to investigate. Giselle, our Bopper, ended up to accompany Jimmy Jim at his apartment to interrogate him, and it turned out into a Barry White music scene where Jimmy Jim tried to seduce her, and she failed her role. So the camera just went onto the ceiling where a little disco ball was spinning, and we left that to imagination as some sweet love making from the motherland was executed. Luke, our Bionic man, good old boy, arrived at the crime scene, and he was stopped again by the cops, so he couldn't approach the victim and seek out, investigate the scene. Rufus, our rocker, soul man, guitar man, black man, former badge, offered, of course, offered the cops authentic Marlboros, and the badges start to talk. And the victim was known as Martin, the ice cream man. So, of course, he was a known figure in Little Street. A loss for everyone in town. So Giselle finished her business and ordered her gang, the Cracking Jacks, to pull a diversion. Lil Twig, our favorite Cracking Jack, threw his orange drink on the cop's car, while the other one was really prepping seriously a diversion. He just went like full-on Chris Tucker crazy, like Schlack, and throwing his orange drink in the cup and start to run and shout foul language at the cop. So the cop just jumped into their car and started to drive after him. So the Cracking Jacks saw that Little Twig would be again rapidly arrested and such. So Giselle used her powerful legs, and she pushed a large trash container right in front of the car, and the car just banged against it, and the engine just choked and stopped. So Little Twig had more time to flee. Another one of the members just threw a tear gas grenade, and the cops started coughing, and they started again the engine and start driving around the trash container and try to catch Little Twig. Was already very far away, and the Cracking Jacks just spreaded like cockroaches when you open the light. So that left Luke and Rufus free to examine the victim. So for our bluesman rocker, poor Martin was the victim of a heart attack, and that was that. Poor guy, poor sucker. But for Luke, he remarked, he noticed that the color of the skin was not the same, probably from exsanguination, and he found, of course, 2 puncture marks in his neck. So he went like, no, it can't be, it cannot be true. And at this point, the players were not fully aware of where this game is going. Is it supernatural? Is it super science? They were not sure, but they just rolled with it. And of course, as the game state just started to play to see what was going to happen. So they found the ice cream truck. They reconstituted the scene, the murder scene. Just a small opening at the top of the ice cream truck was the only way to enter at the moment, or it was one of the explanations. So either a small creature or somebody could enter the small opening. So it made no sense, of course. So they went to Martin, the ice cream man's apartment. They discovered that he was a lonely man living in a small apartment filled with a collection of die-cast mechanical robots and toys from the 50s, and pictures of him with his cats and his mother, his grumpy mother. So Luke, just for fun, just took a robot and cranked it to animate it, but it started to make some weird noise, like tick 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 tick. So both of my players' eyes widened, and they just went, "Oh no, shit!" So Luke grabbed his friend, his best buddy Rufus, and shielded him from an explosion, and both of them were pushed outside the windows and landed on a car roof, like crashing, and glasses everywhere and smoke. And Rufus was unhurt, but Luke had like a cracked rib, and he was like, oh, he was grinning with pain. So and Giselle was just outside as they played this out. So the group decided to further the investigation, but this time to investigate the other murder of this series of murder. There was a victim called Tim the Mailman and Billy Joe the Bluesman. So they went at the morgue. Luke broke into the morgue, generating some heat from his illegal move and criminal activity. And heat in the game is just a way of unlocking the first star in GTA, or you generate a um, an aura of criminality around you, and the GM can spend this heat too. And I did later on. So after consulting, or just reading the coroner's file, they open one of the big drawers of this wall in the morgue where the corpses are kept. So they just open Tim the mailman's drawer to confirm that he had the same puncture wound in the neck. And when Luke turned around to open Billy Joe's drawer, Billy Joe's was standing in front of him in vampire spawn mode with fangs and claws out, and he went, "Oh shit!" And wrestling with the vampire spawn, he just dropped his flashlight, and now everyone was rolling with something less in the game. A big penalty on all the roll just because they were fighting in darkness, essentially. So Rufus tried to find the light switch, but he ended up his hand in a breaker's box and electrocuting himself slightly. So it was like, ouch! And the group continued to fight in darkness for some time with the vampire spawn. And Tim the mailman, of course, rose from his unit and jumped on Giselle meanwhile. And fighting him, she later kicked the mailman several yards away, and he impaled himself on a Bunsen burner connector, little tube where the gas is coming out. So he went like he was impaled on the table. So she just opened the valve, threw a lighter, and as he burned into a ball of flame, she was walking away in slow motion, like with fire behind her, generating also 2 points of heat for starting a fire in a government building. That was fun, but also very cool. Luke was thrown out into a glass wall, and he just pierced through the glass wall, and as the vampire Billy Joe, the bluesman, was jumping towards him, he used this bionic strength and just ripped a wooden plank and impaled the vampire in the chest, stopping him permanently. So Rufus just activated the fire alarm as they prepared to leave the place, and as they went outside, they looked at each other, realizing that the vampire burning was smelling. He had a smell of incense. He was smelling of church. So Rufus remembered at some point a figure on the rooftop just turning around, flapping a cape, and he remembered that the cape was of the color violet purple. And they all remembered that the Reverend Jordan Black was wearing violet robe. So they all went, "Oh shit, we know we know who the killer is." So Luke jumped in his muscle car, and the other as well, and he decided to drive Fireball. This is the name of his car. He decided to drive Fireball quite fast to go quickly to the church. I spent all the heat Giselle had accumulated, and to produce a police car to chase them in the street. And on board, I described two brothers, two cops, two brothers. One with big aviator-style glasses, with a fine douchey mustache, like myself, but smaller, maybe more douchey, and and racing gloves. And he was driving. He took the CB and just sent the description to the central. And Luke received one more point of heat because he didn't stop the car from the cops. You're supposed to stop your car, so they were driving like, shit. It was going from bad to worse. They wanted to save the city from this vampire killer, but the cops were not after them. So one of my players shouted, "Oh shit! It's the Hensons!" So from now on, they were known as the Hensons brothers, like in the movie, that hockey movie. So another player, Rufus players, was like describing them, and we agreed that these guys were crazy. Crazy guys, crazy brash redneck who ended up in the forces and were like loose cannons of sort. So while the driver drove his patrol car, the other one pulled himself out the window, pumped a shotgun. He lost his cap because of the wind, and he shot fireball and he shattered the back window, exposing the crew to another attack. So Giselle's player decided to use her intimate knowledge of the streets to trap the pursuer and force them onto a bridge. And she described the bridge of having this rotating platform. So she wanted to cross the bridge at the right moment to trap the cops on the platform. So the game stopped there for a little minute as we scratch our collective head, our collective noggin, looking for a basic move that could pull that off. And I ended up asking for a brains roll with something less, with a dice and the highest dice removed. But she succeeded grandiosely, and she just, yeah, it just happened in the game. But the game let us down for a moment there. So Fireball veered into the main street towards the church, and the Super Action Time crew made their entrance in the church, pushing the door, walking in slow motion with some kick-ass music. I played at the same time. And so the Reverend Jordan Black was there in full vampire mode and attire with his purple robe. And members of his chore was there. 6 vampire spawn in gospel robes, chanting and singing together. And he revealed himself as Blackula. And now my players lost it, and everyone was laughing their asses off. So the final fight was pretty crazy. A rundown of it quickly. They beat down the 6 gospel choir vampire spawn with quite some ease. Giselle at some point was pushed with a spawn into a confessional, and the confessional started to move around and shake, and suddenly the vampire spawn's head just went through the confessional like and unconscious, and Giselle just went out of there shaking her hand. She did that without rolling. It was so cool. We just went, okay, it's happened. The vampire spawn is out. It's just fantastic. Luke used this bionic strength and bionic legs to escape danger. Rufus at some point, there was a large statue pushed towards him, and he just sidestepped like super cool as the statue just wham next to him, and he took out his gun and without looking like this, boom! He shot the vampire spawn, and I decided to make him roll a smoke his ass move, but using his smooth instead of his hustle. Bringing an interesting idea how to change the attribute for the basic move you can do in the game. Because he wasn't looking at the guy, he just was in the cool moment, So the dexterity hustle move didn't fit in this. And he succeeded. He just destroyed the vampire or hit him once in the chest. Later on, Luke decided to do the same to Blackula. He decided to use his bionic strength to push a giant statue on Blackula, of course, and he was struggling with Giselle at this point. So Rufus took Giselle and he helped his sister out. He exposed himself to danger by removing Giselle out of there, and the statue just went wham on Blackula, and it disappeared under a ton of stone statue weight. So while they were questioning themselves what to do next with the smoke and particle in the air, Blackula materialized behind Rufus, slightly beat up, and he just bit him in the neck hard, like blood were spraying like wild, like Kill Bill style. And so Giselle just turned to Blackula and kicked the vampire lord in his 100 nuts, and he went down like ooh. It was the perfect ending to this vampire lord. Of course, he was not dead. He's a vampire, but Luke took a sharp piece of wood and make sure Blackula won't ever come back to Little Street. So our Rufus was dying on the floor in a blood bath pool, blood everywhere, and they decided to, hey, let's bring him into the car and drive to the hospital. But I informed my player, if you do that, the scene will end, and as the rules stipulate, Rufus will die because he's at dying. He's at that dying level of his health point, or as they are called, the arm. So confusion at the table. How do you first aid a guy on the spur of the moment? How do you stabilize him? So we read quickly in the book and didn't know what to do. No basic move was helping us. I found quickly the move. There is a story where you are a war vet, where you are an army medic. There is a move to help a guy, but no players had that move. Of course, it's reserved for another role. So the only option was like Rufus dying. My player and I were not accepting that as a possibility. So I decided to leave that to chance, not knowing what was the rule exactly. Of course, I found later on my cheat sheets and notes about studying the game, I found how to do it. But on the moment like this, I was not remembering this line. So I decided to let that to chance. And I made one of them rule brains, and just to stabilize him. So we let that to chance, and the player rolled a 10, a full success. So Rufus was stabilized. But as a side note, when you want to stabilize a dying person in this game, you have to use a first aid kit. And if you don't have a first aid kit, no amounts of shredded cloth, scarf, or improvised tourniquet will not work. You're pretty stuck with a dying person who will die unless you have a badge, a medic badge or something, which is ridiculous. And my players and I are maybe more used to not accept what's on the sheet necessarily, or games with a default for some skills, hard default, but there is something to do in these improvised situation to save a body. But in this game, it's like, no, he will die. He will die at the end of the scene. We could have just went, okay, he will die. And in fact, me and my player, a Rufus player, he was like, am I going to end up a vampire? And I was like, yeah, maybe you could still play your character as a rocker vampire with his guitar, and that would be fantastic. But in the end, the other two were trying to save his life, and they were trying in the narration to do something about it. So we went with the dice roll, and they decided that he was alive. So the game ended with him, Rufus, blacking out into the car as he was stabilized. A couple of days later, Giselle was pushing Rufus' wheelchair as in the background. A new reverend was welcomed into Little Street, generic. There was a story. It was a pretty fun game. Now, we encountered two roadblocks. The first aid healing kit move. Yeah, later on I figure out you have to have a first aid kit. So this is idiotic like that. You have to have this piece of equipment. You cannot improvise a first aid kit. I was tempted to ask for an XP, or I was tempted to. We just went with a brains roll, who seems legit. Um, and of course, the scene where Giselle tried to stop the car chase with an intimate knowledge of the streets. There was no move to do that kind of thing you can do in Fate Core, for example, create an advantage or create a situation where maybe the other party will get stuck or trapped. There was, we are thinking of maybe adding this move to the basic move you can do in the game. So lessons learned, and I tried to make this video as quick as I can. So lesson learned. First, the game is better played a second time. You get more sense of it, where you need to improvise and make up your own stuff, or where the game can help you with actual game rule and feeling like a game and not just like a spontaneous exercise in creativity, which is fine too. But yeah, some people will be yeah, taken aback maybe by this. Second thing, you need a first aid kit. I don't know about you, but if this is the rule of the game, every group should have at least a first aid kit in their stuff. It's pretty basic. I would change that for a basic move to not depend on some object, but okay, it's maybe how you play the game. So third, some move you won't find, like the for example the first aid kit, and sometimes the basic move, you're trying to use the basic move, but you will not find what is applicable to your situation. Four, moves sometimes beg to be rolled with other attributes, like the smoke his ass move that Rufus did using his smoot. But another player could have used the smoke his ass move using his fate, his soul stat, using his true faith in God to try to aim the heart of the vampire and take him down with fate. So that could have happened too. So discovering that the attributes can be mobile or should be mobile reinforced my belief that this game have less rule, even less rule than they proposed. And five, the crazier the better. When I came up with the idea of Blackula, it was by just I happened to stumble upon the Blackula's real movie, blaxploitation movie Blackula, and I combined that idea with the gospel scene in Blues Brother, and I just went like, this is a perfect way to hide my vampire lord if a crazy old preacher is just like their friend or the friend of the community. And six, the game is beyond easy to customize. The idea of a sheet where we could have group move came to me while playing. One of my players asked to have, if the group could have a Charlie's Angel-like boss who could help the group by tuning the radio and just listening to the radio what's going on, and translate or decode some kind of hidden message for them. The idea was good, but some other player was like, no, we don't need that. So we changed that sequence into a free your mind move, and yeah, he just listened to the music and pedal to the metal, went for some speed, frightening some another character, and yeah, he had like his inspiration like that. But I had the idea of adding a sheet with basic group move that everybody in this group can do. A move maybe like call the boss or listen to the radio, and adding some sequential, maybe inspiring this move from the free or mind move. So there you go. Half an hour. I tried to speak as fast as I could with my notes. So thank you for watching. So this was a great session. Monkey Fun Studio is really nailing this product down. The problem we had with the game was not their fault. They did an exquisite job on the game. Our fault was more with our usual way of playing. Even if we played a lot of story games, our gripe is more with the Apocalypse game, how it is built from the foundation, and how it played out. But now, 3 sessions in, I'll probably discover more ways to improvise. But this game requires you to make up stuff on your own and come up with your own solution. So be aware of that. But apart from that, this is a great game, and I cannot wait to see the Fate and Savage World version of this. And I'm even tempted to maybe use this as a source book for a GURPS game or a True 20 or Mutants and Mastermind version of it. So thanks for watching.